friends, welcome back. S'more here, bringing you some more 7 Days to Die news and opinions. This is a summation and opinion piece on the Alpha 16 QA number 11, presented by Joel. Joel gives us 40 to 50 to almost 60 minutes of Q&A, which is really awesome of him. I try and condense it down to 15 minutes or less, so that way you guys get the gist of it, plus S'more's 2 cents if you care about that kind of stuff, and then nothing else. So, here we go. All right, Joel says yes to a set of storm doors, which he calls basically a larger hatch. Think like if you have a root cellar or a storm cellar underneath your house, the big doors that fling open and they're kind of set at like a 30-degree angle to the ground. Think of that. I'm a fan of that. And also, like, movable windows would be great too. Let's see. Joel says yes, eventually, to the paint tool being able to paint the whole block at one time and not just the face of said block, which I think is a good move. The paint tool, I think, is really, it's going to be really powerful, but it also kind of depends on how it's implemented. And if you have to paint every face of the block every time, no matter what, that could be real tedious. But, hey, what else are you going to do at night, right? Joel says maybe to a super tall, lanky feral that can simply walk across and span the gaps that we typically leave between some sort of shoddy ramp and then the top of our walls. Let's see. I don't necessarily think that it would fit with the cannon, so I'm not such a huge fan. But Joel, in that same vein, did mention that vultures are going to be a game changer. What I think he might envision is instead of another zombie that can bridge the gap, we'll have vultures swooping down quickly, kind of gracefully, and en masse, like the Hornets, but not so janky. Think like the flying enemies in Borderlands, Racks, R-A-K-K-S's, Racks. Think like that. Joel says no to a better variety of cards, and I'm going to add, for the time being, he laments that they take up a lot of texture, and before the pimps get to that, they need to write some better texture code, such that the engine does a better job of handling the texture memory load. Joel explained a little bit about how Unity works, and basically when it comes to texture buffering and memory, it's a little janky. So they're going to need to work on that before they start implementing things like cop cars, SWAT vans, ambulances, things like that that would have specialized loot. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to add a huge touch. I hope they can get it in. We'll see. Let's see. Joel says a 1-hour photo concept is a decent idea. Basically, an in-game camera lets people take screenshots that they can then go to a 1-hour photo POI or find or maybe even make chemicals to develop the photos so you can share them with other players in game. He says it's a decent idea, and he quoted a few other games that have a similar mechanic like Ark or Rust. But it would be quite a bit of work for them to develop those game mechanics. In reality, I think that we're close to feature lock. I think the pimps know everything that they want to get in the game. I think if somebody comes up with a good idea, which occasionally we find in these Q&As, that isn't a lot of work, they'll toss it in. But I think that the pimps have a pretty good idea of everything that they're going to add to the game between now and going beta. I think that they may have an alpha or 2 development cycle more than they might be realizing right now. But there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah. My note here says that they don't seem very interested in adding huge new mechanics. Their plate seems pretty full, is what my note says there. Joel says probably to new, larger, more aggressive types of zombies, but he didn't want to let on too much. I think more than the behemoth, which again I'm not a big fan of. I think I've gone on the record like 4 times and said that. But I think this means that there is more than the behemoth coming. And overall, I really liked this Q&A. I thought Joel did a really good job. And we'll touch on some more of that here as we go on. Joel says no talk on weapon attachment rights. Now he wants to focus on legendary items in the game. And then he went on to mention a method of weapon upgrades via the legendary weapon system that he hasn't really explained upon yet. I'm hoping something like Borderlands, where you get random weapons and the attributes of the weapons are randomized. That's probably way too ambitious for a game like this. This is a voxel-based tower survival crafting. It's not a hard FPS like Borderlands is, but a guy can dream, right? Joel says meh to making additional brands for the major stores. Instead of like a shotgun messiah, have like, I don't know, pistol thingamajig, or instead of working stiffs, have people that work really hard all day long and don't make enough money store. What I thought would be cool, though, to play upon this idea is if we found flyers for these chains or special loot that corroborated with these brands. If Joel wants brands, let's use them throughout the game. I think that they're missing an opportunity here to build some immersion and some more fun in the game. Joel says we'll have much more incentive to actively fight in Horde Night in the coming alphas than we do right now. He mentions irradiated zombies that regen health, don't like it. Ferals that are stronger and faster beyond the current large ferals, i.e., the current large ferals make other zombies into feral-esque zombies. Always know where you're at, faster, stronger, more health. Or those standard zombies feast on a player corpse and then become that bigger, stronger feral, which, yeah. And then lastly, the huge resin zombie. Again, not a fan. He mentioned hopefully that these changes make it into 16, but it sounded like he was leaning more towards 17. Joel says maybe to a terrain smoothing mechanic. I think it might be nice to have once we really get into sculpting bases towards endgame. Basically, sometimes the landscape gets a little jagged, a little bumpy, a little weird. It would be nice to give the hoe another function such that it would allow you to create nicely sculpted landscaping or in and around your base. I think that's cool, but I think it goes right alongside the paint gun where to paint every face of a block, to sculpt every block might get a little tedious, but again, we don't have much else to do at night once we're safely, behind our walls and we got everything we need. All right. Joel says they are planning on improving water, and this is a big one here, guys. This is pretty exciting. Adding aquatic life and unlife. I'm guessing fishing, rafts, and boats, and then eventually undead stuff in the water. He didn't specify like a drowned zombie or maybe some undead fish or sharks. And then he didn't know when they would get to this, but getting water working mechanics was a good first step. Sounds like water will get a huge third pass, which I think is nice, which will then open the floodgates for water exploration, underwater base builds, underwater POIs, etc. A huge major upgrade to the game. This is something that's now on my radar, right up there with the legendary gun system, the breadcrumb system. Then those are things that I'm looking forward to more and more as they get closer, more so than some of the other things like the behemoth zombie. Let's see. But it does sound like they really need to get water working. They got to take a third swing at the mechanics, and then maybe after that, all these things will come afterwards. Joel states that they just about got the game where it's going to be looking graphically. They'll add distant POI generation, but that's about it. Water will get reworked, some textures getting redone, simplified, and maybe some new textures implemented the way Joel shows us with the new block placement system and painting tool. Do you guys remember the new ladders that he's making? I thought they looked great. That's the kind of new stuff we can expect from here. It's basically refinement of what we currently have, but graphically, I think this game is about 95% where it's going to. Now, distant POI generation is going to be huge, and again, once they dropped distant land terrain generation on us, I was blown away with how much I really appreciated it, especially on a more powerful machine. And I'm running a i3770K, that's a couple years old, right? And a 970 GTX, that's a couple years old, right? And I'm still running the game 1920, 1080, more than 60 FPS, full settings. Let's see. Joel has also stated that they have already started to analyze how to optimize most efficiently in beta, and I'm anticipating that we're going to get quite a bit of performance increase come early beta as they get that low-hanging fruit of optimizations. And I hope that we see some more features added in. But then Joel turned around and said that they anticipate that they'll be going gold late 2017, early 2018. So with their alpha release schedule, I think we can add 3 months and say the middle of 2018. And that the game should run smooth as butter with a medium strength build of a machine in the early to middle 2018 time range. I thought that this would provide ample room for more game mechanics, maybe via mods. However, it sounds like what they're going to do is any additional computational bandwidth that their optimizations would free up, they're going to add more zombies per player, and they're going to try to support more than the currently supported 8 players. Almost done, guys. Joel said improved models and maybe a new food item or drink in Alpha 16, but a much larger food chain is to be coming in a later Alpha. I hope so. We have all these awesome foods and different kind of meats that I think they're eventually going to put back in the game. It is too bad that all we have is hunger and thirst and the way things are right now. I would love to see a protein and a nutrients bar that together combine wind up making your hunger bar. You keep them both up, right? Phrasing. A thirst bar is fine. And I think that when we have the protein and the nutrients bar, you can start really getting into the nitty-gritty about why having a good variety of foods is so important for you. We could even go further into more extensive buffs and debuffs depending on your diet. It would make early game suck a bit more than it already does. More challenge after all, early game, and I don't necessarily know that we need that. but it would add another, I think I would find it to be an interesting mechanic for mid and late game. Maybe you would need all those excellent foods to get the buffs to survive the bandit hordes and things like that. Let's see. Joel says that they are developing a system such that harder zombies spawn later in game rather than the day-night cycle. Apparently some zombies will only spawn at night, which I hadn't necessarily noticed, but I'm not around outside a whole lot at night. I like to turtle up and craft and build. To me, that's the time to do that, right? That's why we build such elaborate bases. And this system would also take into account not just what time of day it is, but it would also factor in how harsh of a biome are you in, and this system might up zombie HP such that if you in one day you're in rainbow unicorn fart maple forest biome, right, and that's the bouncy house of biomes to play in, you might get a zombie and it's got low HP and it doesn't hit real hard and you down it pretty quickly, even with your very meh stone tools. But that exact same looking zombie the very next day in the wasteland, dude, you're screwed biome. That zombie is going to have way more health, hit harder, and you're probably going to have a bad day. You're going to be french frying when you should have pizza. You're going to have a bad day. Moving on. Joel says that the newer POIs like stores and such could be added to Dyersville, and he kind of waffled on it, but I think he and the other pimps aren't really interested in revamping much of Nav's gain and more so focusing on overall game mechanics, which I think in this stage of game development is probably wise. However, I would think Dyersville is ripe for an overhaul come beta. And if for nothing more than just nostalgia purposes, right? Who hasn't ran into Dyersville at night, right? That's kind of a 7 Days to Die gauntlet. Everybody has to do that at least once. I'd like to see an overhaul that adds one of each of the POIs, add another row of blocks on both sides of the town. So instead of like a 4x7 blocks, it's like 5x8 blocks big, just more room, etc. Redo all of Dyersville. Make it more interesting, put a lot of time and effort into it so all the detail is there. I mean, we have sidewalks and curbs in Dyersville that we don't have anywhere else in the game. I would love to see an overhaul of that. I would play that. Do an overhaul and turn around and make that one massive POI that spawns in random gen. Maybe you're lucky enough to get an overhauled Dyersville in random gen. Joel says the pimps have talked about a fight for your life system, which I would love. Again, I'm a huge fan of Borderlands. And then most of the time when I play, I'm trying to at least co-op. And any mechanic that encourages cooperation, I'm a big fan of. Joel stated that big changes are coming to land claim blocks, but he didn't elaborate. So they're going to take another swing at that. Lastly, Joel says that the breadcrumb system will result in the zombies simply destroying the blocks between the zombies and the player, like a more potent feral system. They'll just plow through anything. And he didn't say this exactly, but I'm going to read between the lines a little bit, and I'm going to guess that if you're up on the second floor or you've exploited the 2 or 3 gap jump to the top of your wall, right? I think they're just going to obliterate your first floor until the second floor comes down. Now, we'll see what happens. But that's kind of what I'm anticipating. Alongside the big destroy your bases zombies, with the behemoth zombies, with the raiders tossed in there, with the vultures tossed in there. You know, lots of changes coming. We'll see how it goes. But guys, that's just my 2 cents, and I would love to hear your guys' 2 cents in the comment section below, so make sure that you are posting comments down there. Let me know what you think, things you're looking forward to, things you're not excited for, maybe other game mechanics that haven't been brought up yet. Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I will see you in the next episode. Also, Hal and I get the very last battery that we need at the very tail end of this video. So make sure that you watch the whole thing just so you can see me getting the battery that we're going to use to make the workbench when we play on this coming Thursday. So, small spoiler, but we did it. We didn't just cheat it in. You guys can see it. And then Hal and I will see you on the weekend. Bye, guys.
Share and subscribe for more.